Hey, this is Doug from Foscale Models. Today we're going to take another look at the layout, which is right behind this wall here. We built this wall so that we could expand the layout and get some much needed wall space on this side of the shop. This is where we keep our cast metal detail parts and our 3D printed parts. We're going to walk around the corner and take a look at the layout. But before we do that, please be sure you hit subscribe down below so you get notified when we make a new video. And if you like the video, please give us a like. So let's take a walk around the corner here and we'll take a look at the layout. So that, of course, as you can see, is the Empire State Building on the backdrop there in the distance. And that is the overall look I want to create for the layout eventually, with different New York landmarks seen from Queens across the East River. This area here is a bit of a waterfront section. This is the Dutch Kills, which is a little offshoot of the Newtown Creek, which is a very industrial body of water that runs through Queens. And there's a lot of industrial track that runs through there and a lot of businesses, and that's kind of what we're mimicking here. I'm not sticking to too much of the prototype as far as what buildings are where. This, of course, is one of our kits, Pendleton Marine, which is nowhere to be found in Queens anywhere, but I like the building on the waterfront here, so there it is. But most of the layout will be waterfront, either these little sections of canals. On the other side, it's going to be all waterfront for the entire length of the 24 feet that it runs. And as I said, there aren't too many prototypes, though this white building here will be a prototype. This is based on the Pepsi Cola building in Queens, which used to sit right on the East River with a big landmark Pepsi sign on the roof. And that's going to be scratch built. It's kind of half done. It needs windows and details and all that sort of thing. But this waterfront here, basically it's just a cutout of the pink foam, which is used throughout the entire layout, which is sitting on masonite. And the masonite's painted green and then covered with Mod Podge for water. And of course we did all this detailing in another video. So this is meant to represent a low tide scene. It's probably one of my favorite things to model because it's when the water comes out, it reveals all the stuff that's hidden half the time by the water. And it's pretty typical for this New York scene to have all this junk. Maybe not so much anymore, but in the 70s, definitely. And what's interesting about it to me is that it's a mostly very urban, dense, concrete, brick-rich environment, but you do have these little spots of nature just peeking out and growing wherever it can, where they didn't build something. So this is pretty representative of that. There's still some concrete walls on either side, or a wood retaining wall. But nature's always finding a way to get in and out of all these little spots. So as I said, this will be the Pepsi Cola building that was around for a long time in Queens. I keep a picture of it up here. I'll post a better picture in the video here. But it's got this big Pepsi Cola sign on the roof, which is going to be great to model when I get to it. So I keep the paper up there to remind me. And this is just laser cut MDF. You could do it out of strip wood and wood, but you don't need a laser cutter, but it's pretty crude in the back. It's just kind of held together with scraps of wood. But this is actually a good spot. You can see the track in the back, which is raised up by the foundation of this building. So we use it for another track. So further down here is the end we showed in a previous video on the layout, and we've got another section of creek here, and this is going to be a little oil facility. I'm not sure how it's going to look, but I did install this. This is one of our kits. This is called Yard Office 3, but we made it a oil facility. So there'll be some tanks here. I'm not sure how it's going to look. I'll have a loading platform here. Walters makes one, which is just a loading platform for trucks and transferring the bulk oil into trucks or the tanks. I do have this steel column here, that's holding up the loft section above. I may cut this so this is sort of hiding the column a little bit. It's not going to hide it completely, of course, but it will hide some of it. So I might have to slice it open after it's weathered and modeled, and then kind of work around it, and then build the facility in there and get some trucks in there. So in this part of the creek here, I've got a concrete retaining wall and a riprap wall, or a sheet piling wall rather. And this concrete wall, it's pretty simple. It's just a rectangle of plaster that I made in a form on a piece of foam core about an 1/8 inch or a 1/4 inch thick, painted it to look like concrete. And then once I had it here, I drilled some holes to fit these various sections of pipe. Eventually 1 or 2 of them will have some water pouring out, but it's a very easy way to get a nice, a more interesting wall than just a blank wall. You could only do maybe 1 of these if you want to. You don't have to do 3. I've actually got a 4th here that's submerged. This one has a gate that keeps trash from getting into the pipe. That's a kind of a lift-up gate kind of situation that can be inspected and checked. Eventually I'll have a ladder here that will be a railing or some kind of fencing along this road. So there is still more to do here. So I've tried to mix up all the different kinds of retaining walls or seawalls that would be along a canal like this. And of course I'm using some reference photos and pictures. But this is just basically a timber wall. I believe I used 3/16 inch square wood for the horizontal pieces, and then some 1/8 inch vertical posts, which would have been driven into the water to hold back this section of earth. So here, of course, is our Pendleton Marine kit, which you may have seen on the website, or you may have one yourself. Of course, this had to be on the waterfront for us. In this case, we have another concrete retaining wall, except it's got some timber supports framed on the outside. It's another variation of seawall. And then this is just a wood pier section that was built by my friend Lauren. He originally built it for the FSM kit, Emporium Seafood, which will be on the layout somewhere else down the road, but I used half of the section of the pier here to make this a little bit bigger. Eventually we'll get some more details on the dock here. So in the back here, this was kind of a tricky spot. I was able to get a siding in off that rear track that runs the back side of the layout, but it didn't leave me much of a lot here. If you put a boxcar here, just say for example, and you had a structure here, it really wouldn't be believable that a building lot this size would be serviced by a boxcar that's almost as big as the building. So I've sort of expanded this a little bit. The Pepsi building was originally here, going to start here, but now I've added this so I can make this building much longer and go all the way to here in this big triangular lot. So it'll be a little bit more believable that you'd drop off a boxcar. So this just gives you an idea of the track arrangement in this section. Basically there are 2, I don't want to call them main lines, but they are the 2 lines of the railroad that I'm modeling here. It's mostly an extension railway, none of it's really main line. So these 2 extension lines serve these sidings here, and there's some sidings here, but there's plenty of room for operation for runarounds and all sorts of places where you can drop off cars, get out of the way of another train, because I do want to operate eventually once it's finished. So storage space is always an issue with any layout, so I took advantage of some space under the layout here to store some engines and freight cars. Probably about 2 or 3 more of these would be helpful. This isn't even nearly enough to hold what I'm using on the layout. But that's pretty much most modelers' problems, is where do we put our rolling stock. This is just on 2 drawer slides. It's just a big flat drawer I made with plywood and just pine wood. So that's pretty much it for this section for now. I do need to get to work on backdrops, of course. That's probably the biggest project on this layout. This section alone is about 35 feet long, and every bit of it needs a backdrop building. Some of it will be photo backdrop, but a lot of it does need to be relief structures, even if they're 1 inch deep. I am playing around with some photo backdrops. That red brick building back there is a photo backdrop from Trackside scenery, which is great. I think I'll probably install that there, but add some 3-dimensional details, detail the roof with some signage, a billboard, vents, chimneys, and all that sort of thing. But that's pretty much what I'm going to be working on next, is probably some backdrops here to hide all this unfinished work. I hope you enjoyed taking a look at this part of the layout. We'll see you next time. Thanks.